Hello everyone and welcome to the Love on the Line TV conversations. On the 31st of May there was a special symposium in Brisbane called the Tainted Love Symposium. My last posting was the report from that symposium. If you have missed it, so you can go back and you can find it and look at it. However, after the symposium, I am delighted to say that I was able to record a special conversation with Sharon Armstrong from New Zealand, who was one of the keynote speakers, who so generously shared her story. Now we have here three parts to this conversation. The first part is her story, as I recorded it from her own lips at the symposium. The second part is our conversation about recovery and how she got through 2.5-year imprisonment in Argentina after being scammed by through a true romance scam to becoming a drug mule. The third part is our conversation about shame and the humiliation, about forgiveness, gratitude, and the importance of family in the recovery process, and a little bit about the future and maybe a happy ending in the end. So, without further ado, I will present to you Sharon Armstrong.
I left a great career in New Zealand to move to be by my family in Brisbane in the middle of 2010. The next few months were spent looking for work. I was consistently told I was overqualified for various positions, and over the next 6 months I became more and more despondent. At the end of October, a well-meaning cousin of mine signed me up to a dating site, Match.com. I was not overly happy with this and found it all a little creepy actually, so I decided that I would unsubscribe from the site. My profile was to remain live for a further 3 days. It was in this time that I received a message from a very handsome-looking man, Frank Mark Linus. His first message to me had me hooked like I had never been before. We seemed to have so much in common, although a lot of difference as well, which made it all exciting. He only lived about 45 minutes away from where I was living at the time. He told me he was a civil engineer. His fiancée had been killed in a car accident some years earlier, and his mother had worked for the UN in human rights, but had died 8 years previously. He was an only child, and had loved his mother dearly, and had spent most of his childhood living in various countries around the world. He was alone, and told me he loved my strong commitment to my family, and he could tell I was an honest person with the same values as him. He would talk about how excited he was to be part of such a loving family. We were meant to meet about a week after we first started talking. However, on the big day, he rang, most upset, to say he had been called to Sydney for a job interview. If successful, it would mean a big contract in London. He later called me to say that he had landed the contract, and if I supported his decision to go, he needed to leave immediately. Of course I said go. He needed work. He made contact as soon as he arrived in London. So I'm being groomed over a period of 5 months. The journey consisted of many highs and probably just as many lows. His contract fell over by Christmas, and the first request for money came. While I initially responded to him saying that I was concerned he had asked me for money, and that maybe this was all too good to be true, he came back saying it's not about the money, honey, and don't worry about sending it, he'd find another way to pay his workers. So I ended up feeling guilty that I hadn't believed him, and sent off the first of many money transactions. He then begins to warm me up to the idea of doing some contracting work with him, which may involve having to travel. He tells me I would be his PA. Really, his fiancée, he says. Throughout January, there was one issue after another that required him needing more money. from his previous workers threatening him due to money they were owed, through to him falling gravely ill and ending up in a hospital and remaining there for 3 weeks, ensuring an ever-increasing list of problems arising. By this stage, he was consuming my life and every thought. We would text, message and talk on the phone on a daily basis. In February 2011, I was offered a short-term contract back in New Zealand. Timely really, because by this stage I had already sent most of my savings to him via Western Union, a service I had never previously used. So a job meant I could support him while he secured another contract. By the end of March, he tells me he has secured a very lucrative contract doing some civil engineering type work in London, and he convinces me to travel to South America as his PA to pick up his contract and to take it on to London for him to sign. Meanwhile, the love of my life continues to charm me and tells me of the time when we will meet for the first time, how we will spend our time together in London before returning with me to New Zealand, then to Australia to meet my family, and if all went well, returning to London with him while he completed his contract. Why wouldn't it go well? We'd known each other intimately. We'd been speaking for 5 months and shared things I had never shared with anyone. So I make arrangements, all excited and apprehensive at the same time, about finally meeting him face to face and beginning our life together as he had promised. I organise some work commitments I had and finally tell my family. They weren't happy about my going, but hey, at 53, no one was really going to tell me what to do. The organisation sends me my airline tickets and I'm flying to London, stopping over in Argentina to pick up his contract. Originally only stopping over for a couple of days at most, suddenly everything changes. And they want me to fly to Switzerland to pick up more papers, then to travel by train to Madrid before finally arriving in London. By this stage I was feeling very anxious. In a foreign country, waiting for the papers to be delivered, and then to have the plans keep changing, my stress was skyrocketing. In comes my saviour, who says to me, "Don't worry, honey, they was Esperanza Gomez, who was the secretary to the organisation Frank was going to work for, can pick up the papers in Switzerland. You just bring the documents to London, and then I will fly to Spain, sign them, and return in time for your birthday." A week later, the night before my flight to London, I'm given a suitcase, which I immediately check. It was empty. Frank tells me they've hidden the contract in the lining of the suitcase. I questioned both himself and Esperanza as to why the papers have been hidden. They come up with a variety of excuses, including the fact that the contract is worth a lot of money. I'm still feeling anxious about this when Frank tells me, if I'm concerned, lift up the lining and check out the contract. With this response, I think, you're just being paranoid, Sharon, because you trust this man, and he is telling you how wonderful and fabulous our life together will be. Also, upon my arrival in London, he was going to take the documents on to Spain, sign them, and return to me within 24 hours. So I think, well, if he had anything sus in the bag, then surely he wouldn't be offering to take it on to Spain. So the next day, I turn up at the airport, I check in the bag and make it through customs. While waiting for the boarding announcement, my name is called and I'm asked to identify my bag, which I do. Eventually, this all leads to me being arrested at around 3 p.m. on Wednesday the 13th of April 2011 and spending the next 2.5 years locked up in a prison in Argentina, a victim of a scam that involved romance, money.
Here you have Sharon's story to the point when she was arrested in Argentina. Now further on, the second part is about the recovery and how she got through this 2.5 years in imprisonment. And the third part, directly after that, Thank you for watching part 1 of Love on the Line TV Conversations, special conversation with Elina Juusola and Sharon Armstrong.